So today we're going to take a look at DRX versus Onslayers, the two best Korean teams. And I think a question that a lot of people might have is what are the chances that, one of these teams from the minor regions, in quotation marks, can actually do well in these tournaments. Obviously, we saw it with Crew at the World Championships, but at Iceland, what chance do they really have? Well, in my opinion, a lot of these top teams from these other regions have a decent chance, to be fair. In my view, there's Mech at the top, and then there's like a sizable gap. And then probably you'd say Fnatic next, and then maybe a small gap. And then I really do believe that the top teams from NA, the top team, from like a DRX from Korea here, or the Loud from Brazil, all those best teams from those other regions, legit could have a good chance, because I think the gap isn't that big. And DRX did some really cool things here on Breeze on their attack side, and let's take a look at it. And it starts here on round number 5, and what's going to happen here is we're going to get a B push, but they're going to get a bit delayed because there's going to be a Viper ult here in B main from the defending side, and that's obviously going to cause some issues for them. But they aren't going to be deterred by that Viper ult at all, and they're going to use it against Onslayers in a way, because if you look at what Onslayers, how the rest of the team is set up, this Viper is kind of alone, right? Because generally when you get a Viper ult, you just expect the team to go to the other site because it's not worth dealing with. But instead, Onslayers are going to deal with this Viper ult, and they're instead going to go for an elbow push instead and create some problems for this Viper. So let's see how they manage to do it. So as we run this forward, here comes the Viper ult. They flash early elbow just to check no one's come up anytime close. They've got the Viper orb there in Nest as well that you can see. And after, probably thinking about what they want to do with this Viper ult for a while, what they're going to do is send up this normal looking Viper wall for B. They put the Viper orb up there in Nest as well, so that they can make this cross here. They send out the Sky ult. The Sky ult is here going to tell them if anyone is close there, and hopefully push them back if they are, running up this midway. And they're going to Sky Dog as well and follow the dog in with the Jet and the Chamber. So let's run it through. So here's the Sky Dog. There's the orb and Nest. They're following it through, and then as these two get onto site, I love this, right? So they still have pressure on this Viper from this side, right? And that means that this Viper also can't just run out, because there's still people here, and they're still showing presence to this Viper that there are people on this side of the ult as well. So the Viper can't just run out. The Jet is going to aim for this Sova and clear the rest of the backside and kind of follow that Sky ult in, because they know that someone is on the backside. And this Chamber is going to, make sure that no one is speaking CT, and they're going to surprise them by just how, fast it was, how they got there so fast. The Jet dashes in onto the site there. She's past the Viper wall, and they're about to win these fights. You see this Viper still has to deal with the pressure coming from there. They win their first 2 fights on the rotate here across, so they get that kill with the Chamber. The Jet follows the Sky ult and gets that kill. And now, they're in a very difficult position here on Slayers, particularly this Viper, because this Viper knows that there's someone here, maybe 1, maybe 3. The Viper doesn't really know. And then obviously they know that there's pressure on the site as well. So this Viper is feeling like, well, they're just going to come from me at 2 sides, which is why this Viper is going to make the choice that they do, which looks kind of weird when you first see it, because this Viper is going to get this kill on the Chamber and then just run out. That Chamber just TP'd a bit too close to the Viper ult there, maybe wasn't quite sure where it was, and then just run out. But the thing, you might think that that's a weird choice, but really they didn't have any other choice, because they didn't know, like, this Jet could be right coming behind them and is about to get a free kill. So they kind of had to do something, and so that's why they run out. And obviously you end up in a 4v2, and ultimately it ends up being a save here for Onslayers and a very good round win for DRX. And now let's come to the very next round, and this one has cool things coming in from both sides, actually, because again, we're just going to get a B take. This time it's a more normal looking B take, but there's some really cool little things done by both teams here. So let's take a look at how that happens. So in it comes again. We got the same Sky Flash actually going towards elbow, and in we go. We're going to go for this, again, pretty fast B take. They send up the same Viper wall again, and they're going to follow in the Sky Dog this time through B main. So in goes a Sova dart here at the back of their site, and in comes this Sky Dog here that they're about to follow, as you can see. And in we go, right? It's time to go in, and so we're going to get the Jet Dash. So it smokes this, which is quite interesting as well. We're going to get this Jet Dash, but the thing I want you to watch here is, well, a couple things. One, the Jet is going to get caught by a Cypher Trip that is across here, and that Cypher Trip is going to be the Sova ult, like, thing to go off, and that's going to get the Sova a kill. But another thing that I really like is, look at how far ahead the Chamber is, the rest of kind of, the rest of the team, if you will, because they're following the Sky Dog and whatnot, and the Sova dart. It works really well where this Chamber is run in here kind of with the Jet, he's about to get a kill and then TP back to here and then run in with the rest of the team, which I just think is really, really cool. So as we watch this forward, so here's the chamber trap. There's the Sova ult on that. But if we watch the map for this chamber here, so the chamber kills the KO, look, and then he comes back, and then they all go together again, and he's with the team, which I just thought was really, really cool. Now, as this round plays forward, the chamber dies, and they kind of end up in this sticky situation where, you know, they didn't get as much of the site perhaps as they wanted. That Jet dying to that Sova ult, you know, really slowed them down. So they end up in this position where, you know, they're in a tough spot. They do manage to get a bit more control of site, but it's not enough really. And they do manage to get the spike down, but it's not going to be enough for them because they just kind of got trapped here on the site. That Jet dying, you know, where she did with the Sova ult, you know, kind of did slow them down. And so ultimately here, once Stacks here on Sky dies and falls to this Cypher, it kind of is game over really in that 4v2. But I think, again, really cool from both sides, right? The Cypher trip into a Sova ult is something that I haven't really seen before, but putting it like in a position like this is really quite a cool idea. And then I also, and they did this multiple rounds at DRX, this chamber idea of having him being like the second entry and then coming back and then entering with the team, because the Sova and the Sky were using, you know, drones and dogs and whatnot, so we're further back. So they were basically sending in drone, dog, Jet, and chamber, and then the chamber would come back and enter with the Sky and the Sova once they were actually ready to run into the site. Thought that was really cool. And then the very next round, we get this really cool A take instead. So we've got 3 here up tunnel, the chamber, the Jet, and the Sky, and then we've got the Sova and the Viper here. They sent out an early flash in this area to make sure that no one was kind of close and maybe pushing them even. And you can see how patient these two are going to play here. But then they're walking up here with the Viper Orb, as you can see there down tube. And they're going to make the most of this. And again, they do some really, really cool things. So they send the drone in, as you can see here, down A main. So that's going to just clear A main for them and allow them to pressure through cave a bit. But they're about to open the door. And again, the timing is really good here. Now, you may not have seen that, but you can just see here that the door is just open, and this KO is got slightly flashed, but that was because actually he accidentally turned away from it. Because what happened is, as soon as they opened the door, they timed a flash perfectly to just come under whilst, you know, the door was like at this level. They sent a flash underneath it, which is super cool. And they did this multiple rounds, and I just thought that's a really, really cool idea. And that is the emphasis for go time, because the Jet dashes in, gets down here with the smoke, and now anyone playing in this area is in real trouble, because you've got this Jet here, and what's going to happen is the Jet is going to swing this way. And if we take a look at the map, what's going to happen is the Jet's going to swing out down here, get the kill on this Viper, which is a common place to play, and then come back across and start causing chaos for these players as well, because the Jet has the support from the top of tube here as well. So these players are in a real pickle, because they have to worry about both the Jet over here and these players here in tube looking at down on them as well. It's a really tough position to be in as a defender, and it works so well. And then whilst this is going on as well, you've just got these two being patient, right? Because they know that, again, this Viper has to be worried about that, because that's this Viper's job, and that's why this Viper is going to die to the Jet for free. So these two just wait for this Viper to die to the Jet, and then that's their signal to go in and push, because they know that that was the person that was, you know, to guard them, as it were. So as we play this forward, there's the first kill. This KO is having to run around the box and has to deal with 2. Again, TS doesn't know where to look. Does he look at the Jet? Does he look at the Sky who's peeking out of there? Doesn't know, and they end up again in this 5v2. Wonderful take, some really cool ideas. I really love the Sky flash underneath the door so that you can't be flashed by it, but they can. Thought that was just super cool. The timings were all perfect, and again, just a wonderful take. Now let's come to round 9, and this is something I haven't really discussed too much, but I'm sure it might help some of you. What we're going to end up in is a 1 versus 3 here for Mako on the Viper, okay? And they tried that same actual A hit that we just saw, right? Where they flash out here. That's why all these bodies are here around tube, because it hadn't gone well this time. This time they'd been caught out. And we're going to end up in a 1v3. And one thing I really want to talk about in a 1v3 is always be where your opponents don't expect you to be. Anytime you're in 1 versus more than 1, always be where they don't expect you to be. That's your best chance of making something of this. And that is exactly what happens, because they've seen the Viper in cave. That, you know, they know that the Viper is here. And the 3 players at the start are going to stick together, right? So the Viper's able to get away if we watch the map. And obviously, normally what you expect here is the Viper's just going to go to B and plant on B. But the Viper's not going to do that, right? Because be where they don't expect you to be is your best chance of doing that. And they expect the Viper to go to B. They initially just stick together, right, which is perfectly fine. They make sure that the Viper has fully gone, you know, away from this site. They collect themselves, get themselves into positions. They have someone watching short. They have, you know, 2 people watching cave where she last was, and they're expecting it to be a B hit. Eventually, you know, this jet is about to run off and just make sure it's not B. But our Viper can hear that jet, obviously, and if we watch the screen of this Viper here, you know, the Viper knows that this jet's here, and you might think, oh, just swing out and kill it. But no, that would give everything away, and you probably won't win the round. Instead, Mako walks all the way round the back, which they think can't happen, right? Because this jet would have died. This jet would have died, you know, if the Viper's here, this jet would have died. So it can't be there either. And who goes back up tube in this scenario? Mako does, and it's absolutely genius because he waits for God Dead there, gets a free kill. Now, interesting situation for Zumba here because the time is so low that if, you know, he doesn't necessarily need to peek that, I think. Obviously, again, he's probably better off just waiting for the jet there to come back to A. You know, the Viper has no idea where you are at that point. Like, you could be anywhere. So probably not the best idea by Zumba to peek that. Then something also very weird happens here that you're about to see because he plants the spike. He obviously knows that the jet is on B as well because he saw him run. Then he does this jumping ult, and for whatever reason, if we look at that ult, it just goes all this way, and I don't really know why. So it actually doesn't end up on the spike, which I don't think is what they wanted. But the same really applies here because Mako's actually going to lose this 1v1. The point is, be where you don't expect them to be. And here's the thing. If I'm Mako here, you know, as soon as this spike gets tapped, what's going to happen is he's going to walk towards the spike. What he should do in this instance is walk away from the spike because there is no way this jet expects you to be back there. The thing is, you know where the jet is because the jet has to be near the spike. So you don't have to walk up to the spike. Walk away from the spike because you know where they are, so you can just wait. And as soon as he sees that the spike isn't being defused, he should not go in, right? He should just stay away, get out of your ult, wait for the next tap, drop your smoke, kill them. You know, there's no way this jet expects you to be behind them. And so, you know, not perfectly played there in the end, but I really like the initial idea. And I think this was a good example of, you know, what to do when you're in a 1v3, 1v4. Do something unexpected. Don't, whatever you think, oh, they'll probably do this, do the opposite. Do something weird. And then let's come to round 11. And this one, we're going to get a full Gambit strat. For those of you who haven't seen the Gambit strat, it essentially is this, and it works very well with this Sky. So we're going to get a Viper wall that goes like this, which is an extremely weird and bizarre Viper wall to start off with, but it works very well for this strategy because the idea is to just send chaos towards mid, and that's exactly what they do. You're going to get double jet smoke here, and the idea is basically you can pivot, and it gives you control of this area, and then you can pivot either this way or that way from it. And you're going to create so much chaos in this A site with, you know, them not having control of mid, and generally defenders, you know, won't have cave control anyway. It means that they feel like they're just getting pushed from 2 directions and are going to panic and freeze on this A site, and that's going to allow you to either, you know, just go in on A site and attack them with it, or instead you can come and pivot to B very easily. And that's what Gambit did multiple times in their game that I analyzed on that, and that's exactly what we're going to get here, because as we watch it, we get an early Sky Flash, right? It's all about getting this early control of like this area. So we get an early Sky Flash to push anyone back off, and then we're going to get these double jet smokes here, and we're about to get in that Viper wall as well, as you're about to see. Now the weird like wild card that's thrown in here is the Bazzy on jet on the other team. As you can see, there's those double jet smokes. He just pushes down and gets traded, but that's absolutely fine. And here's the thing. We've got this Sova Dart coming in here again on this A site, and we've got the drone here as well. And so these 3 players freeze because they think it's an A hit. You know, sure, yeah, they traded this in mid, but they've seen so much pressure here on A that they still think it's an A hit. And you're going to see that they just freeze for a while. And that's going to give, I mean, DRX probably didn't even know how much space and time they really had. But if you just watch the map here and what's going to happen, the Sky is able to run all the way up here. And then they actually change their mind. They decide to group back up in B main. The Sky could have gone down here. They could have pushed through. Well, look, the Sky's indecision here. Like, in terms of what to do. That's how much space they had. And look, these players are still kind of frozen on A. Like, what is going on? And they've had time to run across the entire map and get this B execute going. And in they go. And they're going to get delayed here, right? Because King is able to get the first kill, and then as they're planting the spike, they're going to get Sova ulted as well. So actually, the delay does come in from Onslayers there. But I was just impressed by how much time was given for this. But they do eventually get the spike down, and then it's going to play out in this post plant here, where Zest gets one there. We're going to get trades back and forth here. You know, again, this is all really cool, I think. KO knives, we get drones coming in, flashes. That's a really good flash there from KO. Generally, a good position for KO is just flashing around here. Very difficult to deal with. And you see a lot of kills in that instance on a retake. But then we end up in this 2v2. Okay, so we end up in this 2v2. And what's going to happen is, because this Skye is back here and you've got the Sova with an op here, it's going to become very difficult for these players, because as long as this Skye lives, they're in trouble. And that's exactly what the Skye does. And I often talk about just living, because it'll create problems for your opponents, and that's exactly what the Skye does. Doesn't peek out too much, takes a quick fire, but then just hides again, and and they know they have to deal with the Sova as well, right? So they start tapping the spike, but then they're getting shock darted, so they can't really deal with that. And then this Viper dies here, because this Skye has just been, you know, this Sova has been causing chaos now for them. So they focus on Sova, and that gives the Skye the time to reposition and get in there. And then it's a 2v1, and they end up winning the 2v1, of course, as well. And so those are just some of the cool things that I think DRX did, and if they play like this with some of these ideas that I think are really cool, then they very well could go and, you know, do very well, I think, at an international tournament. I really think that the gap between, you know, sort of the other regions and NA and EMEA, aside from maybe Mech, who I think are just a step above everyone else, aside from that one team, I do think that the margins are quite small, and that we could see, you know, some pretty big upsets that I wouldn't even call upsets, really, because I think the gap is pretty small.